Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome to the fourth session of the speaker series, Women Peacemakers Before and After 1325. My name is Maria Teresa González Esquivel, and I am honored to host this special conversation as an alumna of the School of Diplomacy and International Relations at Seton Hall University. I had the opportunity to specialize in Latin America and the Caribbean, and I was the Sergio Vieira de Mello Fellow in 2020, when I was able to focus on Colombia, and I've been able to continue that work now as a leading team member of the Center for Peace and Conflict Studies. We have different programs across the Middle East and China, and we are working on advancing the women, peace, and security agenda. Today, we are honored to have Ms. Rosa Emilia Salamanca from Colombia, who will be sharing her exceptional expertise on women, peace, and security with us. This conversation is part of the learning process on the role of women that are working on building peace across the world. Now, before we hear from Ms. Salamanca, we will have the opening remarks from the sponsors of the event, the School of Diplomacy and International Relations at Seton Hall University, and the United Nations Association of the USA. We will start the opening remarks with Dean Courtney Smith. He's the acting dean of the School of Diplomacy and International Relations at Seton Hall University. Dean Smith holds a PhD on political science and international relations from Ohio State University. His areas of expertise include international organizations, the United Nations, and peace studies. Dean Smith has interviewed over 100 United Nations delegates and staff members for his research on the organization and its members. Some of his publications include his book, Politics and Process of the United Nations, The Global Dance, 2 book chapters on Kofi Annan's leadership as Secretary General, in addition to several other papers and articles. Dean Smith, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Maria. I appreciate the opportunity to welcome you all. For my welcome remarks at the last in this series, I did focus on my research on the UN and on how the issues associated with Resolution 1325 and the Women, Peace, and Security Agenda really permeate so many areas of activity at the UN. When I was thinking about my remarks early this morning, I actually had CNN on at the same time. And I'm looking at all the images coming out of Ukraine, and it struck me that women are playing multiple roles in this conflict, and they're getting impacted in multiple ways by this conflict. Both as combatants and in particular, just the terrible images of them on the move, in the subways trying to scrounge for food and provide for their families. It's just truly shocking pictures. But what strikes me is that the Women, Peace, and Security Agenda is so much more than just looking at the ways in which women are impacted by direct violence and have a clear role to play in moving societies out of situations of direct violence. There's so many ways in which structural violence also disproportionately and differentially impact the lives of women. And so that's why I think conversations like this are so important. And I very much look forward to learning from Rosa Emilia Salamanca alongside with everyone else. I just want to end my remarks with a couple of other comments. I think the timing of this event, I want to applaud the organizers. Our Center for Peace and Conflict Studies under the leadership of Zheng Wang and David Wood and Maria, your excellent work in pulling this together. Raja Atali, our visiting scholar for this semester, for her wonderful connections that are enriching conversations on our campus. This is Women's History Month in the U.S. and this is day 3 of that month. And so I think having an event like this to help frame the very important ways in which women are impacted and play a role in the peace and security agenda is just a wonderful timing. The last word of thanks I want to give is with our partner organization, the United Nations Association of the USA. They've been a partner of the school since our founding in 1997. And I just have to say that UNA, in the work of its 20,000 members across more than like 225 chapters around the country, they embody the work of the UN and support the work of the UN at the local, national, and global level. And that includes all aspects of the UN's agenda, from the Sustainable Development Goals to the Women's Peace and Security agenda that we're hearing about today. So I very much welcome all of the collaborations that went into this event, and I look forward to learning alongside all of you. And I'm going to pass it back to Maria to introduce our next speaker. But thank you all for this wonderful opportunity.
Thank you very much, Dean Smith. Well, now I'm going to introduce our next speaker. We have Ms. London Bell. She's going to deliver the opening remarks on behalf of UNA USA. Ms. Bell is the 2020 African Descent Fellow for the United Nations Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, which is a highly competitive fellowship program within the United Nations International Decade for People of African Descent, running from 2015 up until 2024. She is the founder and president of Bell Global Justice Institute, a non-governmental organization based in Metro Detroit. They focus on promoting gender equity and advancing and protecting the human rights of women and girls. London is a member of the United Nations Association of the USA, and she serves as the National Council Secretary and Regional Representative for the Great Lakes region. In addition, London serves as a national co-advisor for UNA Women, an affinity group for UNA USA. London also represents UNA USA as a member of the Executive Committee of the U.S. Civil Society Working Group on Women, Peace and Security, and the Gender-Based Violence Coalition. London earned her BA degree in English at the University of Michigan. Then she went on to earn her Juris Doctor and Master of Laws in International Law at DePaul University College of Law. She focused her Master of Laws studies in International Human Rights Law and Policy and Criminal Justice. Mrs. Bell, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. On behalf of the United Nations Association of the USA, I too would like to welcome everyone and thank each of you for participating today. I would like to thank Dean Smith, Maria, and Rosa, and everyone for their collaboration in this event. And as Dean Smith was saying, and for those of you who are unfamiliar with UNA USA, we are a grassroots movement of 20,000 Americans who convene in 220 campus and community chapters across the US. I'm a member of the Greater Detroit chapter, to educating, inspiring, and mobilizing Americans to support the principles and vital work of the UN and its agencies. And we work to achieve these UN Sustainable Development Goals by the year 2030. And so at UNA USA, we work to elevate the women, peace, and security issues through our UNA Women Affinity Group, educational programs like this one, partnerships and advocacy outreach to members of Congress and the administration. We also inform our communities and volunteers about organizations that support women and girls. And as a volunteer leader with our National Council and UNA Women, I've seen firsthand how our actions are making a real impact. For example, we are working to encourage local governments to adopt the principles of CEDAW, and as all of you know, the UN Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, through our Cities for CEDAW campaign in an effort to promote gender equality and gender equity locally. We also participate in interagency consultations on the U.S. implementation of UN Security Council Resolution 1325 as a member of the U.S. Civil Society Working Group on Women, Peace, and Security. So if you would like to participate in our network and activities, I highly encourage you to visit unausa.org. Once again, I want to thank each of you for joining us today and for embracing a global perspective for which we all play a part. And I hope you enjoy Ms. Salamanca's talk on the implementation of UN Security Council Resolution 1325 and its implications in Colombia. And I hope you will join us for future events. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bell. Now, I would like to give the floor for the introductory remarks to David Wood, Professor of Practice at the School of Diplomacy and International Relations at Seton Hall University, and the MENA Director of the Center for Peace and Conflict Studies. Professor Wood has explored participatory approaches to dialogue and mediation, especially during periods of open violence when national dialogue on political negotiations become stalled. He has supported community-level mediation processes, facilitated practical national dialogue processes, and organized community input into formal conflict management mechanisms. He holds an MA in Politics, Security and Integration from University College London, and a BA in Philosophy and Russian from Bristol University. Professor Wood, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Maria, and all. It's very good to see you all, and I'm looking forward to this talk. It's something that's really hopefully going to illuminate the specific role that Rosa Emilia Salamanca played in Colombia and plays in Colombia, and also provide learning for us as we look at the role of women in peace processes globally. The Centre is a mix of research and practice, and that's why we're very focused on this series, because we're looking at how we can learn from the practical experience of real women mediators and their role in both promoting the rights of women during conflict, but also negotiating peace settlements and peace agreements in a way that perhaps men can't. So far in the series, we've had 3 excellent speakers. We started with our own Raja Italia, who we're very glad, as Dean Courtney Smith said, that has joined us, who talked about the role of the Women's Advisory Board to the Syrian peace process and some of the challenges it faces in actually directly influencing the peace process, but also on some of the work of women mediators at the community level, such as the I Am She network, who's made fantastic gains in achieving prisoner releases, but also getting ceasefires at a local level. Raja, as those of you who know me know, is one of my heroes, especially following her work to achieve a temporary cessation of bombardments in Idlib. So she's proven the significance and the impact of women. Then we had Ambassador Swanee Hunt, who spoke about her rich experience globally in both supporting peace processes in Europe, but also trying to learn from women mediators globally. And one of the key outcomes that I took away from that learning process was that unless we involve women at the outset, then the agreements that are reached might not be the most impactful and sustainable. So we talked around the Dayton Accords and how women who would perhaps be able to point out the weakness on the Accords weren't involved in the process, and hence the Accords suffered from the outset a birthing trauma. And then we also had the inspirational Madame Fatuma Abdulkadir Adan, who talked about her work at a grassroots level in Kenya in helping girls overcome the restrictions that they face to participate in education, sports, and public life, but also managing community tensions and violence. I think we heard 2 important points there. One was the importance of acting like a peace terrorist and trying to identify those actions that are positive incentives in communities. And secondly, that it's a risky process working on as women mediators in conflict zones and supporting women's rights in places of conflict. We heard traumatic stories around how the girls that she worked with were kidnapped or forced into child marriages and were removed from education. And it just reinforces that this is a risky process, and while being brave, we should think through the risks that are faced. So just having summarized the process, I'll hand back to Maria and just underline that I'm really looking forward to this amazing speaker.
Thank you very much, Professor Wood. Well, now I would like to welcome Ms. Rosa Emilia Salamanca to give her keynote speech. I'm gonna give a brief introduction of Ms. Salamanca. She's the director of Corporación Se Hace, a Colombian feminist organization. She has studies in anthropology and human rights defense, and she has been an activist and researcher in peace for the past 30 years. She was one of the spokespersons of the National Women's Summit in the peace negotiation process between the Colombian government and las FARC. She's a member of Colectivo de Pensamiento Mujeres, Paz y Seguridad, Women, Peace and Security think tank, who won the Peace Christie Award in 2016. In 2019, she was the winner of the Wilton Park Award in the United Kingdom for her work in peace building, and she was one of the finalists for the 2020 Peace Prize of the U.S. Institute for Peace. She is currently promoting reflections on security and mediation in Latin America from a feminist perspective, in an attempt to transform the women, peace, and security agenda by promoting women, dialogue, and the security network. Ms. Salamanca, we're really looking forward to learn from you today and engage in a deep conversation about the role of women in peace and security after your speech. Ms. Salamanca, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Maria, and thank you so much. I am very honored to be here and to share my experience with you and the people that are studying and trying to get more knowledge and trying to discuss more deeply what the women's peace and security agenda means nowadays. So I think that is important to. I was thinking so much about this presentation. Really, I was thinking so much because I think that how can we really transmit what has been the last 20 years, 22 years, and try to reach people saying what all this idea and of women peace and security agenda means for us. And I think it has different ways of looking at it, in a very personal way, in a very collective way, in a very political way, in all the ways that a person can have some kind of behavior in our countries, in a very international way also. So I just want to say that I first heard about the 1325 when, with a person that is present, and I would like to mention, that is Swanee Hunt. And that was the first time I went to what we call in that time the colloquiums of peace, women's and peace, and so and so. And I remember that we were in just talking and in a meeting, and she asked me, "You have heard something about what is the role of women in peace and what means a resolution and so on so." And that was like 1999. And I don't remember exactly my answer, but I remember that I was thinking from that time still to now, what is the role of women in peace building? And that was like the first moment that something came concrete. And I think that afterward, the resolution 1325 was delivered by the Security Council. And then many water has gone down the bridges. And I think that what was originally the intention of the 1325 that was so important, then the idea of what has been changing, what has been improving, what has been the develops of the theoretics and the practice in women's peace agenda has been really giant. But as I was saying before, it has many components, many personal and many political and research and so on, so that will make this agenda move. It's like a complete, incredible dynamic where many people are working and have been working since since 2000 or even before. So many changes have occurred in this agenda. So I can say that this agenda has done a lot of changes in me as a woman, as a person, and also in the way I act and in the way that I act politically or in any way. So first, I want to share that I come from a country, as you know, that has been in conflict since I have memory. So one of the really challenges for us, as many of the countries you work on or with, is how we can imagine peace if you have never had peace. So what is peace for us? Is the absence of arms? Is people not going to war? Is people not going to conflict? If we have been for the last 60, 70 years in a conflict way of behavior. So the impact of the conflicts are not only in how many people and how many deaf people you count, sino how you build like a culture that is based in the way conflict behaves. Because then there is something, and I don't like to say that humans are like that, but I think that if you are in a conflict environment for a very long time, then you begin to assume that that's the way society behaves, that that's the way, because that's what it comes normal. So I think that one of the most um, crucial points is that maybe many times we think that conflict is a normal way of behavior. And conflict in the way of crashing, in the way of disappearing the other, in the way of not recognizing, and the way that you have some kind of solutions for the conflicts. You have to kill the other because that's the way that you will have like the truth. And also, the other thing that I have learned, and I have, well, is the life that we have, is that for women, peace is not only an issue of what the normal or the recognized conflicts means. It is uh, for us and for women, conflicts begin in the daily life. So I think that is so important to see that exclusion begins for us, for women, and for many other people. I mean, in the daily, in the families, with our partners, and that when we really want to get out of that, we have to realize that many things in our lives have to change so we can really achieve a way of behavior, citizenship behavior, democratic behavior that will come from our daily lives in the relations with our partners, with our family, and so on. And then in all our behavior in society, in communities, in groups, when we do conflict analysis, gender conflict analysis in conflict regions, when we analyze criminality, it's like a focus. So I just want to say this previously, because you need, when you want to have the opinion of women, you cannot see them only as victims, but or like agents of change. And when we talk about agents of change, we are talking that we have to have the strength and the possibilities and all what it means for someone that has been so highly discriminated for so long, for history, to have the capacity and the strength to change. But that is very difficult because political environments, economical environments, religious environments, and so on, so will always take you or will have a lot of weight in your decisions because you are always going to feel guilty. So there are lots of things in the women's peace agenda that has to be taken in account because it's not only a formula, it's not only a political formula, it's a whole change of cultural behavior. And I want to be very strong in that because I, as a woman, I have had to change so much in my way of behavior through 30 years. And it has been such a strong um, challenge because I have to change every day to change in my behavior and to be more secure of what I deliver every time I open my mouth. So it's a huge. We have in back in my collective organization, we have something that is called transforming ourselves, and I think it's very important for women. And also in this introduction, I have to say that if you have even more discrimination, like in our countries where you have been, if you are Native women, or you are Afro-descendant women, or you are a peasant or rural woman that and has been so highly affected by the conflict, then it's so overwhelming that being again an agent of change is really something that is very challenging. You have to, we also say in Spanish, we say, you have to push the back and at the same time you have to swim in a river. So you are in a river and you are pushing your back, but at the same time you are trying to swim. I mean, you are trying to go to the other side of the river. So it's challenging. It's very challenging. That is something because as feminists we say all personal is political. I think that it means that all what are changing in our lives is political. So a women's peace agenda is a combination of rational and not rational changes. And I think it's very important. Maybe some of you that are very academic will say that it's not, I mean, rationality is more important, but I'm sure that many of the decisions in conflicts in our countries are very irrational, and they have a lot of things behind, and that is one of the things that I want to say. In the second hand, I would like to say that that is one of the things that women bring to the floor, to the discussion. It's not one of the things that will bring maybe many of us is that political discussions, economical discussions, social discussions, negotiations are not what we call objetivas, objective. Maria, please, when I say something Spanish that is not understandable, please help me. They are very subjective. They have a lot of subjective. So I think that one of the things that the women's peace agenda and what it has been theoretically framed from the feminist epistemology and all this is what we call the situated context of people. So this is very important. So in security issues and peace, when we talk about why women is so important to participate, is because women in the daily life and in the context are really living day by day all these impacts of the conflicts, all the impacts of discrimination, of racism, of whatever, and they can bring them over in a compact way that they can say, no, this kind of security or this kind of peace is not going to be sustainable because you are losing points of view and approaches that are so important in peace, but they are not assumed by what security means nowadays or what peace will mean. When we were in the peace, I want to say also that 1325 allow women uh, to have a change of recognition that is very important. From being like I forgot. I have just forgotten the word. When we were or when people were confronting in armed conflicts, they have all these impacts to cyber population that were like impacts. I mean, impacts that were just because of war. But I think that the 1325 will has bring humanity and recognition of humanity of women again in conflicts. And I think this is a very important. And it has also not only brought humanity for women and recognition of humanity, um, but also that humanity of women is can be has different dimensions of recognition as as in the political participations, in the protection that they deserve, and in the prevention that maybe they can uh, and the proposals for prevention that women can bring to the table when we discuss security and when we discuss peace. So, as we know, the 1325 is recognized as like the 3P resolutions, but then many things, it was like it was like waving a lot of things that began to arise and to have and to be have recognition. So um, when I can say that the 1325 contributed to change women from being not seen, then to being victims, and then to being agents of security and peace. But then I have to say that patriarchal configuration in the world, patriarchal systems don't allow or don't have a place really for women to speak. So we are always like in the age. Patriarchal system will say, yes, let women talk to see what new things they bring. But when the things that women bring don't don't fit in the squares of the patriarchal system, many of them they are disestimated because in the logic of security and peace of the patriarchal system, it's very difficult to have place and to have a little box for women's proposals because one of the things that women are proposing is concretely to change the patriarchal system of peace and security. So there is a tension there, everyday tension, because we have to change many cultural patriarchal systems to be allowed to speak, but we have to change many patriarchal global systems to be heard, and people to understand that what they think that they are soft solutions or very naive solutions or whatever can have really to fight very much to have place in patriarchal systems, because they are not allowed, because they don't have place, because they don't have logic, because they don't respond to that logic, because they are bringing other logics. They are bringing the logic of care in the center. They are bringing the logic of mediation. They are bringing the logic of the militarization. They are bringing many logics that for the way that is framed security and peace are very difficult. In the case of Colombia, that is the one that I live every day, I think that all the time we are fighting with these logics. All the time we are talking about these logics. I will try to share with you two things that we had and that we are living now. One is, when we had the negotiation with the FARC, we used a 1325 so much to have women in the table, in the negotiation table. We had women, we had a subcommission of gender that had to talk all the time with the women's movement. We have a strong women's movement that have a peace agenda, and that has built a peace agenda and has built a social architecture to have lobby and advocacy. And we also talk about each of the points, but we have to have answers to each one of the points, concrete answers. This was very valuable. And finally, you know that it's one of the most remarkable agreements in gender perspective and in women's rights. But when we came back to the implementation, those were another words. Because in many ways, international community and many people think that signing an agreement is enough. And we have demonstrated, and I think women and everywhere, we have demonstrated once and over that that is not enough, that there are things that we have to change structurally, and that there are things that we have to support, especially in the implementation. Because in the implementation, we need to have a more bigger agenda, really, to achieve what a peace agreement, a signed peace agreement, means. The peace agreement in Colombia was not only the peace for the silence of arms, it was a tool to change the current situation of exclusion, of non-recognition, of racialization, of all what was happening and were the things that brought us to the conflict, or that has maintained us in a conflict. And that there were many conflicts that were connected with the main conflict, the political conflict. I know I don't have so much time now, but I want just to move forward saying that now we have another, we have recycled in some way conflicts and violence in Colombia. You know that we have had so many human rights defenders killed, women and men. We have peace builders killed. We have ex-combatants killed, and we have another time, because we don't have another time conflict and war. It's not the same that we had it. I think that the resonation, the echoes of the peace agreement with the FARC were very strong. So now we have more capacity to say we don't want more solutions like this. We want what we call a complete peace. We want, and I think that women's peace and security agenda is in these 20 years have moved to say we want complete peace. What does it mean, complete peace? Maybe it's utopic, but then we have to look to the conflicts in a more a complex way. Yes, we had in Colombia we had conflict with the FARC, yes, a political conflict. We have another with the ELN and many residual guerrillas that we still have. But we did had a main conflict and a very important conflict with organized crime. And we didn't look in the way that we should to the relations between the political and the criminal way that things were behaving in our countries. And that was something that women were saying all the time. We need to connect the different conflicts. We need to see where all these different conflicts come from and go to. And also, we cannot prevail to keep doing um, negotiations that will privilege how you call it is elites. You have to take in account people because people are the ones that have been excluded and people. So we this year had, as you know, at the beginning of the year last year, uh, in the last year, an incredible social explosion of people saying we don't understand why, and also because in the pandemic things were really complicated. We don't know why we always privilege the armed people for having solutions, and we don't privilege the common people that need really attention and that are going and really making more robust these armed solutions. Finally, I want to say that today in America Latina, we are working very deeply in what peace from the women's perspective means. And I think that now we can have lots of questions and answers, but also in the women's peace agenda and the 1325 and all what has driven since the first day, the 30th, I think, of October of 2000, where 1325 was signed, all the resolutions that have been needed to move forward, the recommendation 30 of CEDAW, and all what we have done, now we as women, we are saying we want also another idea of security. We not only longer talk only about peace, we have to talk about security. And security in what security means, what the idea of security means. That's why we are impulsing the Women's um, Peace and Security in Latin American Network. And I think this is one of the issues because Latin America continues to be one of the most violent subcontinents in the world, but also one that is really expecting to achieve in women's peace agenda a way of framing and a new contribution to the world from what it means for us, peace and security nowadays. Thank you so much, Maria, and thank you, everyone. And I just want to bring some other ways of thinking about 1325. And I will hopefully, I think, hopefully, I will answer some of the questions or what the dynamic is going to be further now.
Thank you very much, Ms. Salamanca, for these insightful visionary remarks. Like many of the concepts that you were discussing were bringing me back to when we had Ambassador Swanee Hunt. And I can see, a lot of similarities and basically agreement on some of the pressing topics that we're seeing in the Women, Peace and Security agenda. So I mean, I have many questions and I have many points, but I don't want to abuse my presenter faculty. So I want to invite everyone that is joining us today to please raise your hand or send your comments on the chat box. This is more of a conversation format. So rather than a traditional session where I would be reading the questions and Rosa Emilia would be answering them, we want to invite you to turn on your microphone, turn on your camera if you can, and just ask the question directly and just engage in conversation with us. So I'm just gonna give a few minutes to everyone because we received a lot of information from you, Rosa Emilia. Thank you very much. And then I'll just start opening, the conversation. I'm seeing we have Pariwish. Pariwish, can you please unmute yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Maria. And thank you so much, Ms. Rosa Emilia Salamanca, for the inspirational discussion. My name is Pariwish. I am project assistant at the Center for Peace and Conflict Studies. So you mentioned that the decision at the national level impact women and people's daily life. I also think that the opposite of that is also very true, that if the peace is not felt in the daily life of people, it's not a really ideal version of the peace. We also know that unfortunately, when people are making decisions, the peace agreements, they do not consider this point, that how it will impact the daily life of women. So my question is that it seems that we have a clarity because of the Women, Peace and Security agenda, in terms of the vision that we want to create and the role that we envision, but we're still stuck in the how. Like, what should be the indicators that can guide us that this is a meaningful participation of women? Can you discuss about what can tell us, what are those indicators that tell us that things are going in the right direction? Process wise, it is inclusive. Process wise, it considers and value the input of the women, or there is a way to know that, this is a red flag. Probably things are going to have a cost or impact on women. Thank you so much.
Do you think, Maria, that we can take 2 or 3 questions and then I will answer?
Of course, Rosa Emilia. Yes, please. So I'm just gonna take the next question. I'm gonna give the floor to Raya, please.
So thank you so much, first of all, Maria, for moderating. And I know how much you are interested in Colombia and worked on Colombia. So it's a great opportunity to host like the exceptional Rosa Emilia with us. So, and thank you so much, Rosa Emilia, for this like insightful thoughts. Like, I just want to let you know that like with Syria, when we started the Syrian revolution, and in 2012, when we started looking into women participation in the peace process, like many times, like Colombian case was brought to our attention, like from the different conversation that we had, especially from international partners. And actually, Colombia was one of the cases that presented in the colloquial in January 2013 with Ambassador Hunt as well. And it was very important to know like the achievement that women in Colombia has got regarding women, peace and security. So you've been, as women in Colombia, inspiration for many of us as Syrian women. And you personally, I shared the floor with you to discuss 1325 in many occasions around the world, actually. So I'm very honored to have the floor with you. So actually, I want to take the first question or the comment in the beginning to ask for your advice and your words for the woman in Ukraine. I feel like during COVID-19, we felt social responsibility to raise awareness about COVID-19 in 2020 and 2021. And now I feel that we have a global responsibility as women peace builders to raise awareness about the need of stopping fires and stopping bombing in Ukraine. So I would love to hear from you some advice for women in Ukraine.
Thank you very much, Raya. Rosa Emilia, so I'll just move on with someone else and then you can give us your answers and we'll start the conversation. So Ambassador Hunt, I noticed you sent a message on the chat box. Would you like to say something? Okay, 1 sec.
Yeah, first of all, I do want to say that that what you're doing here, Maria and Seton Hall, is it's a game changer because of this ongoing, and Raja, please, yes, and because of this ongoing pulling in front of us, putting right in front of us these issues, and bringing someone like Rosa Emilia to, there's no what shall I say, authority that's greater than Rosa Emilia on this subject. And when I think about what's happening in Afghanistan and in Ukraine and before that and after this, Rosa Emilia is right that this isn't about simply women, peace, and security. This is about a change in the culture. And until we can really take that in and say, back up and say, this isn't about what is the role of women. This is about what is the problem, first of all. And then you can think about who are the people who can really affect this problem. It's not just the women, it's the people who are deciding who's going to be in the room as the problem is going to be wrestled with. And that was the Colombian experience of it, that it was so hard to get enough of the outsiders in. And the women played this key role, which we see all over the world in these conflicts, because the women sit down at the table and say, who's not here? Who's not here? Because if you don't get the buy-in from the people throughout the culture, you're not going to be able to change the culture. And that means very, very hard decisions about who is going to be at the table, who's not normally at the table, how much space to give the people who are at the table, whom you're trying to change, etc. So good for you for this very broad way of thinking. And I look forward to being part of this conversation over and over again.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Hunt. We're really honored to have you today here with us. And, we also learned so much from you. And as you mentioned, the idea is just to continue this work. It's just not a one event and like a single speech. It's about coming up with new ideas, learning, and finding ways to push the women, peace, and security agenda. That, as you said, is not just women, peace, and security. Like, it represents a transformation of different cultural norms across the world. And I think women are really well placed, and we know how to push for those changes. We just need to find a way to get more buy-in from everyone else. So thank you, Ambassador Hunt. And Rosa Emilia, would you please start the discussion?
Yes. I didn't know Mrs. Swanian was here. It's an honor for me because we are part of this road, but we are also friends. So it's a pleasure to see you, Ambassador. Thank you so much for being here. I just wrote to you today, so thank you so much. And I think that what the three interventions have said is so important, because You know, when you work so much in this issue and you're working in peace and you're working, is about life and death, is about inclusion, then sometimes you get very depressed because once another, the same question comes. How can women be included? How? And you just said, no, it's not how can women must be there. I mean, that is no longer a question. Sometimes when people come and say, but in that negotiation, how can women should be included, and you just look like you just get some air and you go down and you say, what is the question? I really don't understand. You are asking me if women have to, or what can be the ways of women to be included. This is a 20 years ago question. And now we know that women have to be included. That there is no question about it. Maybe there are many, and also sometimes when you hear, and how can we do it? You always say, I am not catching it, because if you have a design of a negotiation table, you have to design it including women. There's no way. There's no way. There is not other answer nowadays. If you are not doing it, it's because you are deliberately taking out women of the table. So the question is, why are you excluding women? Not how can we include them? I think women on the world will ask, how come that you're excluding women? And I think that that could be sanctioned and should be sanctioned, because it's something that has been so argued, so clear, so transparent, and so many things I've said about that's no way. And the second, and what are the indicators of the impact, um, uh, powers? I think that there are lots of indicators talking about what is the impact of wars or peace. But then I think that it's very important to see what violence in the daily life means for women. So if you can include what violence means in the daily life, you can have a complete idea of indicators of what because one of the things that I always say, and I think is something that is from all the women, is that what happens during the armed conflicts is the exacerbation of what happens in the daily life. So if you have indicators in your daily life, you will maximize them in the conflict moments, and you then will have the relations between the indicators and the maximum of the indicators in the daily life and the violence in daily life, and how it is exacerbated in conflicts, in what we call the crisis. You saw it again how they were exacerbated in COVID. And COVID it was not an armed conflict, but violence towards women during conflict period was completely exacerbated again. Because every time there is a humanitarian crisis, indicators against women and violence will increase, and will increase because the basis is how you put women in a place, or women have been put in places where they have to receive the anger of society in many ways. So we have to change that place, and we have to do it in the daily. And so indicators must be drawn with this idea of security. This idea of security have to change to these nominal indicators to more deep indicators of change. And yes, Raja, I think that it's so important to be a voice, a united voice of women towards Ukraine. maybe Swani and many other women, all the time, I am very collective. I like to work in a collective way. Swani knows that. And it's very difficult for me to talk from my side in a very individual way. Everyone, people insist to me, but talk about you, but talk, and I say no, because I think that nowadays we have to change individual to collective positions. And I say it because we need the strength of communities to come out, and in this case of the international women's movement, because I believe there is an international women's movement that is not an alliance between individuals, but when I'm seated with Raja or someone like Visakha from Sri Lanka or Swani or so many people that are working, I am working with my partners in a global movement. I'm not only I recognize authority of my partners like Swani, but I also recognize a sisterhood with her and with many other women too, with Visakha, with Raja, with Maria, with everyone that will work. So I think that what we should do now is really some kind of very deep voice that can be signed by so many women of the world. And we can do it because we have the social structure to do it. We have the what we did in Women's Wage and Peace and Inclusive Security. We have Warsaw Today Days. We have so many places where women are working, so many networks, the mediator workers, the Latin American workers. So if we should elevate our voice in a way that we can say this is not the way. This is not the way. Maybe we are not fit yet in the structure. We know that we don't fit, but we have to speak, and we have to speak globally because individually, sometimes we feel so powerless in front of a patriarchal way of behavior that is so powerful and so selfish and so many things. So I think it's one of the ways that I would bring, and I ascribe completely the idea of Raja to have a really raised voice. And then about what Swani was saying, I think that yes, sometimes I feel, and I have to share this with you, that when women are called are to clean up the mess that others have done. And I think that this is not the way. We don't like so much to have to do the cleaning nowadays. I think it's one of the things that we have been reivindicating or vindicating, that we have to share the the work that we have to do in the house, and that men that also have to clean and they have to wash dishes and so on. And I think so also in the world. Women are not for cleaning the mess that others are doing. We are also to share the care of the world. And I think in that speech, taking care of the world is really something that is not naive. It's very important. We have to take care of environment. We have to take care of people. Security has to put people in the center. We have to take care when we are talking about intersectionality, because people have to be taken in care in a different way. So I don't think if I'm politically correct, but I think that we are really getting upset of having to clean mess. I am in the one of the space of the, I don't know, the, how you call it, uno de los espacios, uno de los espacios de trabajo. One of the working places that came out of the agreement with the FARC is something that is called the the Commission for Security Dismantling. And I am the delegate of that commission from the women's movement in Colombia. And when we are talking about dismantling all the behaviors that attempt against peace building and human rights defending, we have again reached this idea of having military decisions to take care. And all the time women are saying military decisions not are always the way. There are many other ways that we, and there have to be many other answers. And they are more integral answers. And that is something that has to be accepted. We cannot continue thinking that we are going to give answers if we only look to a piece of the picture and if we don't see the picture as a whole. And that is what we are bringing to the table. And in this commission, a question was done to me by the High Commissioner of Peace of the government. And he said, well, if you see a woman and a man, a soldier and a woman that are confronting each other, and the only point where they have a right to is to kill each other, because also women not go to the war, of course. And there are many studies that talk about why women are also going to the war. I was at the first, like, I didn't have no answer. I couldn't answer as quick as I should. But that afterwards, this question for me was like a clue. And I answer to him and I say, no, Commissioner, I think the answer is not in that moment. You have had to have, you have to look why this soldier and why this woman came to such a confrontation. So if you go backwards, all the things you didn't do that have this epilogue so dramatic that will bring this soldier and these women to a confrontation where is the life of one or the life of other. I think that was really so surprising for me that I was saying, no, then we have to work for the dismantling and all the things we have to work in the path that have been drawn to bring these people to this incredible moment. So these are like somehow my answers to what we are talking about now.
Thank you very much, Rosa Emilia, and everyone for engaging in the conversation. Like I just keep writing and writing, and I have so many ideas that I want to convey, but we have limited time. But I would like to refer a little bit about the point that Pariwish mentioned about inclusiveness. And I'm also thinking about Ambassador Hunt's talk, Fatuma's, Raja's, like everyone. And it's interesting how we, some people in the world keep looking at women, peace, and security issues as just like gender, and they are saying we need to give women a voice in women's rights. And they just completely forget that we're talking about human rights. Women are humans, so we're the same. Therefore, we have the same rights, and we shouldn't be, even though we're different, and there's some aspects that make a great distinction between male and female. Just to simplify things, we are human rights. I mean, we're humans and we have the same human rights. So I see that a lot in the work that we do in the Middle East. Again, gender norms. And it's something that we struggle a lot with because we're trying, I'm more on the operational side of the project, but I see women, they are the ones like pushing and doing everything, like we have great men doing an amazing job, but the role that women play, the ability they have to deal with problems, with conflict, something that would create conflict, is such a unique way, that makes the work easier for everyone. And then therefore, because we have these women participating and coming up with ideas, willing to compromise in order to push forward with the work, we're able to make things happen. So I think the question is more about how do we enable these women in a safe way, rather than they should be there. Like, we know they should be there, as you've said, but we just need to think how we enable them to be safe. Because as you mentioned, Rosa Emilia, there's so much violence, different types of violence. And when we think about conflict, we're only thinking traditionally just like war, and between two states or a non-state actor and the state. But women and humans face so many types of violence every day. Like, we have structural violence, cultural violence. And I think this connects to what you were saying about security. You know, we have peace, but what's security? And security can mean something different for every person. Security can mean having a job, can mean having some food in your plate, can mean being able to go to the doctor and take care of your health needs whenever you need it. Or it can also mean, as a woman, not being raped, not being subject to verbal abuse on a daily basis, and having a space to participate in, society and life. And in the end, all of those spheres of human security are human needs, and we know that the deprivation of human needs ends up leading to conflict, sometimes it's violent conflict. So I think we really have to keep thinking on ways on enabling women to participate more. But just the question is more about how do we make it safe? You mentioned, Rosa Emilia, how in Colombia many leaders are being killed. It's not just men, also women. But sometimes it doesn't have to get to the point of killing, like all the intimidation and the threats that both male and female leaders suffer. That's constraining them from participating in social life, in public life, and defending their rights. So I think learning from different contexts in the world, seeing what is working in some places, what hasn't gone that well, and just come up in these spaces together and think of ways of enabling women to be more active would be really helpful. And just as Ambassador Swanee Hunt mentioned, this is a space, and that's what we're trying to do here. So thank you, everyone, for your comments. I don't know if Pariwish, Ambassador Hunt, Raya would like to elaborate more on what we discussed. But I mean, there's so much just to talk during this conversation. Otherwise, we also have other participants that want to give us a comment or a question. So please let me know if you want to jump in, or if I should just address now Randa Yasir, who has her hand raised.
I'll let her go to the question.
Also, Kain, I think, has had the hand raised.
Their hand, exactly.
Yeah,
Yes, exactly. We have Randa, we have Kyle, and
Nothing
many.
to add. Excited to hear questions.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, so Kyle, could you please go ahead?
Sure. First, thank you very much for speaking today. It's been wonderful to hear you speak. Oh, we got an echo somewhere. That's better. So I was wanted to ask you. You mentioned that one of the main barriers to the role of women in both mediation and peace building is the patriarchal systems that exist. And Ambassador Hunt well said that it is culture that needs to be dismantled and rebuilt so that women can be included in these processes more, but also that their role is taken seriously. So my question was, how can we break down these systems and dismantle these cultures and rebuild them beyond including women? Because I believe it was noted that, yes, women need to be included and they should, but it is their impact that can still be controlled, even if they are included. So I guess my question is, what larger work needs to be done beyond maintaining inclusiveness that we all need to do, including myself, as as we're all future leaders, as students, to facilitate this process of dismantling and rebuilding, so that women can be included, but also that their role is taken seriously as it should be. So thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. Hanan, please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wait, I'm turning my camera on as well. Hi, everyone. Thank you again, Rosa, Emilia, Salamanca, for joining us today. It's an honor to have you here, and I'm happy also to see Ambassador Hunt with us. It's more of a comment than a question. I want to add my voice to our fabulous guest, to what Rajat also said and what Maria touched on, because we kind of have similar background. And I think also Professor Wood can add his voice to that, being in Yemen now, and it's again like similar restricted patriarchal communities that we're talking about here. I want to highlight one statement that you said, Rosa, that I liked a lot, and I can identify with being from Palestine. You said Colombia is in conflict since forever. So being Palestinian Israeli, this is something that resonated with me. And you said, how can you imagine peace if you never had peace? So I want to add also to what Ambassador Hunt said, the intersectionality and the layer that we have to go through. So it's not in the implementation of 1325 for people, say like women in the US, is not the same as people in our community. So we have intersectionality is key here. So while others fight for equality, we're fighting, more of an like for our basic rights, our existential rights, and where we kind of got to the point where our communities unfortunately normalized violence against women and normalized the underrepresentation of women in these political arenas, if I can say that. So it's if a male, let's say, wanted to if a male peacekeeper wanted to join this world of peacekeeping, he can just do that the minute he wants to. But for us, for example, we have to fight many battles first to get to that. So, for example, if we look at, you mentioned the pandemic as well. When the pandemic happened, it mostly affected women because, as you also touched on, like we were the first one in any field that we were doing. We were the first one that needed to retreat and go to, with our families and handle those issues while men got to continue and keep doing their jobs. So you said that it's more of a why not question and not how, but I want to still stress the how question, like how do we implement this, or what's the practical way of doing it in communities like those? Because you said signing the agreement isn't enough, so we need to think, on more of a practical steps in communities like ours. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Hanan. Now, Randa. Oh no, sorry, Randa. Rosa, I'm sorry about that. Rosa Emilia will.
No, Randa and no more, because then I forget.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you, Randa. Sorry, go ahead.
Hello, good evening, everyone. I would like to, first of all, I'm happy I'm seeing most of the ladies that we used to see them at the ICANN annual conference, and we had no opportunity to do that since the past years. Actually, I wanted to ask you, how does the media played a role or had an impact negatively or positively on the very nice mission you were holding all this time? And I'm telling you this because I really understand how sometimes identifying the women peace builders, recognizing them through the media as women peace builders, is, as well as all the advocacy campaigns that we've been holding, how the media was dealing with that, how was supportive or not supportive So I'm really interested to learn from you how this really had an influence on all the mission of the women peace builders during the past years. Thank you a lot.
Well, huge questions. Yeah, Kyle, I think really, and I have always thought is, as women change, men have to change, and is obvious, but I think it's so important because we have to understand that when we talk about these exclusions and so on, from a gender perspective and intersectional and so, we are talking about discriminations that are structured in a way that we name them as very patriarchal structures. And when we talk about very patriarchal structures, we are talking about what you all know, this a primacy of the masculine behaviors over the feminine behaviors. And I think that there is a question all the time, is feminism is also something for men? And I think that for me, when I talk about feminism and when I declare myself I declare myself as a feminist, I think that that is my political choice. For me, feminism is not only theory, is a political bet, because I think feminism talks about all kinds of discriminations and exclusions and violences that are not clearly framed in other ways, in, I don't know, in liberalism, in Marxism, in social democratic, and so on. So they bring over. And I think it's so important, but that is the contribution of women from their perspective, because feminism was born with women rights and fights. So I think that feminism has concrete a way of learning about the world and about reading the world. So I think feminism is also a frame for acting, and it's a frame for acting for men and women. But it demands men to understand the privileges that they have, and that when we talk about distribution of power, and we talk about economical distribution, and we talk about Latin America, and we talk about Mexico or Colombia or our countries, we see that they are so unjust, and distribution is so poor in our countries, and that the inequity is so deep that happens also in the frame of power between men and women. The distribution of power between men and women is so badly done, and men has accumulated so much power in that frame that they have to have conscious that they have to distribute that power if they believe that culture can change. It's a political issue. It's not only cultural. Men have to understand that they have accumulated so much power for decision making that that power has to be distributed, and it has to be distributed with women in this case. and diversity of women and diversity of men, because this accumulation of power has been also been accumulated by some men. And there is a scale of power concentration in different men. There are men that have more power concentration than other men. So we have to distribute that power. And that, from that perspective, feminism brings some kind of light over that. And that means that there must be consciousness of men about the huge frame of patriarchalism, but also the daily life of practice of patriarchal ways and what we call machista ways of behavior. So there are the macro machisms, there are the like the middle machism, and then the macro machism. And for men, it's so difficult to understand what are the micro patriarchal way of behaviors, because they are so inside of them that they have assumed that they are normal. So many men, many times they say, but we have understand that we have to have gender techniques to include gender perspective. Or many men said, but I share how we distribute the work in the family.
I think we lost Rosa Emilia. That's so unfortunate because she was at the highlight of finishing one of her amazing remarks. I hope she's able to join back.
Here.
Oh, perfect, Rosa Emilia. Thank you. Please go on.
I'm so sorry, but something happened and I was out. So what I was saying, Kyle, is men have to look to themselves in a very profound way. It's not enough to be good. You have to be different. You have to think that you, without knowing or because of how things have been framed, accumulate so much power that you don't have conscious about that. I don't think every man is bad. And also, it's very difficult because there are some places, especially religious institutions or other institutions, that will reframe that all the time, all the time. And Hannah, that is very difficult. That is very difficult. I come from a Catholic church and environment, and Colombia is very Catholic, like Mexico and almost all Latin America. We are very Catholic. But we also have, there are movements, and I understand that that is very slow. But one of the things that I have learned from the women that are very Catholic here is that they have done organizations in Colombia that are come from the Catholic frame or the evangelistic frame or Christianity, the world of Christianity, that go all the time back to the holy books, and they really begin to study and to say why women in the holy books were so important. For example, as a way of behavior, and talking about how and in the how you call it in the in the Asian book, in the new book, and what they call a contemporanean Christianity that will respect the women's rights. And we respect. I know that it's a long way. It's a long way. It's very difficult. But they have moved forward, and they have had alliances with the feminist movement to have ways of continue. And I think one of the things that from our side in our network is to allow all the Christian women's organizations to come and to have dialogues between us. And I think it's very important. Dialogues between different currents of women's and so on. So will give inputs to us. And I think it's so important sometimes that people from the Middle East, and I don't know, I don't have the answers because I respect so highly each process. But one of the things that I have seen here are the studies about all these different ways of assuming Christianity, but also we have Muslims here. They are not so as important in other countries, but I know that from religion, they have been moving forward towards how institutions and religions can respect human rights. And I really don't have more answers because I think it's so, I mean, it's a decision that combines women's knowledge about their capacity, and I think there's something to defeat that is very difficult. That is, women always think that they are betraying someone, that they are betraying families, that they are betraying legislation, they are betraying religion, that they are. So one of the steps is just to make people conscious that when we are talking about rights and what we call freedom, autonomy, we are talking about health. We are talking about dignity. We are talking, but every located place have their own way to achieve and to move in these. I can talk from the Christianity side, but sometimes I don't know, in the global space, I suppose there are a lot of conversation between Christianity women and Muslim women and so on, so that we can bring more light to all this, what it means. But we also have indigenous women, native women, that have a very not complicated but unique ways or thinking. Excuse me one.
Thank you, Rosa Emilia.
It was a little bit of noise here. So what I was saying is that for native women, it has been very difficult also to overcome this idea of that because of nature, women and men have this complementation, and that they cannot talk about men and they don't talk about women because this is like what nature will bring to equilibrium. So they have also come in a very interesting way, being and realizing that for equilibrium, having health and having decision making and having care and so on. So it's so important for political issues. I don't know if it makes sense, but you know, it's quite complex because it's not only culture. Culture frames politics, frames economy, and frames the way that we behave. So it's a conversation between all that. And I want to finish saying that media, well, media is such a huge problem today. I mean, media, fake news, and so. What we have done is that we have like a line with, as we have worked with religious people, we also, you are hearing a noise now? No noise on the other side. Okay. So, sorry. I just want to say that you have to have several like paths or ways. You have to have to work with media, women that are in the media. You have to work with women that has all these religious backgrounds. You have to work with political women. You have to work with people that are in the academia. So when you work with media, you have to train media women also to make them part of this movement. So it's a very diverse movement. It's not like the feminists that are moving. They are trying to bring hands to others. So there is a network here that is called the Gender Media Women's Network, that is part of all this collective, and it's also trying to give and frame and to give advice to women and to political, we are now in elections and so on. So talking about the respect and inclusion and the ideas of women. So I know it's a huge work, but every day in 20 years, we have done what many things have been done in hundreds. So what I want to say is that if we keep on going and we keep including women and we keep doing the correct questions from women's side to the ones that are taking the decisions or the politicals and decision makers, then we are doing a very good work, because it's a huge task, a huge task. But we have hope. And in this moment with Ukraine, we are desperate, but we are desperate because of Ukraine. We are desperate because of Syria. We are desperate because of Afghanistan. We are desperate because of Africa. We are desperate because of Colombia. And I know that Ukraine is very important because it's very near to Europe. And I really will say what I have said. May empathy be there all the time with any victim, with any conflict, because where there is sorrow, there is injustice. So we have to be working all over. But what demonstrates so many conflicts all over the place is that the policies that we are working with now are not the policies that are going to take us out from this from what we are living and we have been living for the last 60 years.
Thank you very much, Rosa Emilia. I mean, there's just so many valuable insights from today's conversation. We're running out of time, unfortunately. But before we leave, because you were talking about networking and things that we can do together, we have one participant, Ms. Bushra, and she's been asking about analysis, studies, case studies regarding successful UN role in supporting women inclusion in peace processes. She's a scholar and she's trying to learn more about a successful model for application of the Women, Peace and Security Agenda. So, I mean, Bushra, if you're still here, would you like to mention something to Rosa Emilia? Please.
Hi, everyone. I hope that you can hear me. I'm not very much familiar with the Microsoft team. Sorry, I know you are running time, but I am coming from Yemen. Yemen is a conflict country, and we still face a lot of difficulties for women inclusion in the peace process. So I was thinking that from a feminist perspective, if Ms. Maria should share her expertise for UN rule about supporting the women and the implementation of Women, Peace and Security Agenda, if there is like a success stories or a model of implementation that we can learn in Yemen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bushra. Rosa Emilia?
I can share. We have a problem, a language problem, is that we speak Spanish and the world speaks English. So one of the things that maybe we have been asking all the time that we should translate everything that is done all over the world, because if not, everything begins to be very Anglo-Saxon approach. that is one of the things that I think in security and peace must be taken in account, language. But what I have, Maria, if you remember me, and if I can send things that I have already in English, with pleasure. And yes, Yemen is also, and we can name so much, Myanmar, Cameroon, Congo, etc. So I really think that is not working.
Thank you very much, Rosa Emilia and Bushra. Thank you so much for being here today and joining. Of course, I mean, this is what this space is for. We're going to network, we're going to connect, and we're going to share all the information that we can and just find ways to, unify our efforts and, push for the implementation, like an efficient and effective implementation of the Women, Peace and Security agenda. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining today. We have a lot of lessons today and a lot of learning to capture. Just want to say, Rosa Emilia, just very quickly, I think it's very important to continue to reflect on the ways we are normalizing violence on a daily basis, because as you said, that kind of builds into larger conflicts and the escalation of violence across the world. And it's just not with women, also men. We also need to think about what peace means for everyone, because it seems it has different meanings, depending on the context and on the person, on the individual. And we need to think about security from a broader perspective, more from a human security perspective, where we think about the different spheres that are related to making people feel safe and being safe, not just feel. And then also, one of my main learnings from today is how the UN Resolution 1325 allowed women to be seen, to stop being victims, and now to being agents of change. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining today. We'll share the recording of the event. We'll also have it available on the website of the center. And we look forward to having everyone joining these conversations. We'll have another event in April 7th. We'll make sure to send the invitation to you. And Rosa Emilia, if you want to add anything, please go ahead.
Yeah, I only want to thank you for this invitation. I think that it's so important for every woman to have space to talk, to share what they think it's correct, not correct. But every time we can talk, we elaborate a little bit more. We really find like new ways, and hearing you and your questions. So please count on me whenever you want. And I really, my commitment with this is completely seriously, and just if someone in any country needs any support or needs to be needs me to share the experience, count on that. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Rosa Emilia. Thank you, everyone. That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.